Welcome back to the online training program for 60 Seconds DS. This is going to be week 5, conflict resolution. Conflict resolution is the most misunderstood part of the decision process by most sales professionals. You know, we get caught up in terms like objections, and we're taught these clever, fancy ways to handle objections. And folks, you know, and I've been saying this all throughout this program, there are no real objections in the decision process. If someone truly objected to a product, service, or idea, they would not be in this decision process. They're here to say yes to something. That's the purpose of the decision process. And if you know the buyer's in it, you know they're there to say yes to something, and they have some interest, whether high or low, whether low or high, with your product, service, or idea. That's the purpose of the decision process. That's the good news for us as sellers. If they're talking to us, if they're still engaged, no matter how much we think they have quote-unquote objections, they're in this process to say yes, and they're still in the process, meaning they have not objected, they're still interested in saying yes. But then, we're taught to, as I say, go in and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory because we don't know what to do when we get down here to what we call the green card. We don't know what to do when we get down to conflict resolution. And here's the good news for you. It's not difficult at all, but understand this. When we train on conflict resolution this week, understand that this is predicated. Your effectiveness and success in conflict resolution is predicated on what we did up here in the red card and what we do in the yellow card. What we do up in exploration, the emotional connection, and how great our presentation is in validation. I say to people, if these things aren't congruent, you're not in line up here, this is going to be very difficult. So when I go through what we do and how we train in conflict resolution, just know it's from a position that we've done these two things correctly. Because if we've done these two things correctly and we've identified the buyer and know the buyer's in conflict resolution, here's the good news. They're closer to yes than they've ever been before. In fact, it is my desire and my purpose in the decision process with the buyer to get them into conflict resolution as quickly as possible, because right here is where they're closest to saying yes. Remember, here's what you know. If you've done these two things correctly, these two areas of the decision process correctly with the buyer, they're closer to yes than they've ever been. And understand this, the heart and the brain have already approved the idea. The brain, the skeptical part of the process, has already approved the idea. So here's what that means to us. When we know the buyer has moved to conflict resolution, and we're going to show you how obvious that is. When we know the buyer's moved to conflict resolution, we know it's not time, we know it's not money, we know it's not a lack of need or want. There's only one reason in conflict resolution they're going to say no to this idea, and it's none of those three things, and we all know because we've been talking about it for 4 weeks now. The reason they're going to say no down here, if they do say no, is one reason: fear of change. But what we've done, remember, with a great red card, with a great journey, what we've done way up here in the beginning of the process is we've clearly shown the buyer through the pit of hell and nirvana what not changing looks like, that's the pit of hell, and what changing looks like, that's nirvana. So we show them that not changing is a bad thing. So before we get down here to fear of change, before we get down to conflict resolution, the buyer has in their conscious mind a picture of what no change looks like, and it's bad. So when I say this is predicated on what we do up here, that's what I mean. That we have to have the buyer see clearly in their mind, before they get down here to conflict resolution, what no change looks like. So when I said in the earlier modules, the purpose of conflict resolution is twofold. First of all, it's not to say no to this idea. That's not the purpose of conflict resolution. The purpose of conflict resolution is to park the decision here after the brain's done, because the buyer may need more information and do not yet know what to ask. So it parks it here in another emotional state. The second reason is they need to work it out themselves. Remember, it's a decision process, not a selling process. We have to allow the buyer the ability, and we can help them in this process, by the way. We have to allow the buyer the ability to work this out on their own, like they've done tens of thousands of times in their life already. But here's what we know. Fear of change controls conflict resolution. And what does fear of change want us to do? Fear of change wants us to engage the buyer when they're in conflict resolution. I said in week 1, when two people are in conflict resolution, whether you like it or not, what do we call that? We call that a fight. You're not trying to, it's not intentional. But fear of change wants to pull the seller into conflict resolution with the buyer. We're not going to do that. We're going to do something totally different. We're not going to play by fear of change's rules. We're going to change the game dramatically. And we're going to stack the odds in your favor as a seller. And it's not difficult to do. So what we're going to cover next with a slideshow and narration is the pre-work, the mental preparation you need for conflict resolution. And then we're going to cover the two power tools of conflict resolution, ARCH, which is the lie detector test. We have to get the truth out of the buyer. And then we're going to cover radar, a navigation tool to get the buyer out of conflict resolution. You can help the buyer simply out of conflict resolution with a power tool called radar. They're fun, they're easy, and they're extremely effective. So let's get started.